Chapter 166, He's Back. What does it mean to be taken away? Jian Yun remembered asking Bai Yanran back then, but Bai Yanran did not know. She only said that Chen Yue suddenly had no news. Then the topic in the group suddenly changed. Everyone began to discuss what Chen Yue had done and why she was taken away. Not long after, Chen Yue's former best friend released news that Chen Yue had borrowed a large sum of money from the online loan platform to use for luxury goods. In the end, she could not afford to pay it back on the day of the payment. The interest grew more and more. That loan platform had looked for her many times. She refused to return the money, so she sued her. The person who came to arrest her was someone from the Public Security Bureau. Now that Chen Yue was locked up in the detention center, she was probably going to be sued. Of course, this was the last thing she would say. Jian Yun just treated it as gossip and did not take it to heart. She was just a little curious and felt that Chen Yue's time of arrest was really a little coincidental. The disturbance in the chat group was not worth mentioning to Jian Yun. After she put on her clothes, she heard the door sound. Wu Yangshun and Chen Shufen opened the door and entered. Wu Yangbeicheng followed behind, carrying a large basket of vegetables in his hands. Jian Yun looked at Wu Yangbeicheng's tall and cold face, but his left hand was holding the pot and his right hand was holding the basket. No matter how she looked at it, she felt very happy. Yunduo, is there a phone at the hospital? Chen Shufen could not wait to see Wu Yangfei. When she entered the door, she could not wait to ask, Grandma, it's still early, the hospital is not working yet. Let's wait and see. Jian Yun had heard from Bai Zhe that they had to observe for 48 hours after the surgery. Her mother was still in the ICU. The visiting time for the ICU was between 3 in the afternoon and 3:30 in the morning. So even if they married the hospital in the morning, they would not see Wu Yangfei. Jian Yun was not in a hurry because it was good news that there was no news. Wu Yangshun and Chen Shufen did not mention it again. They knew that among everyone, Jian Yun was the one who was the most stressed. Chen Shufen dotingly pinched Jian Yun's face. Yunduo, look at how skinny you are. Today, Grandma will make delicious food for you. Thank you, Grandma. Jian Yun intimately hugged Chen Shufen and rubbed her shoulder like a kitten. While Wu Yangshun and Chen Shufen were busy in the kitchen, Jian Yun pulled Wu Yangbeicheng's sleeves, who was watching the anti-Japanese drama, and said, Little uncle, let me ask you a question. What question? Wu Yangbeicheng was probably used to leading troops in the army. His expression was very serious. It was obvious that he was an old officer. Have you and Yanren known each other for a long time? Jian Yun tilted her head and sat beside Wu Yangbeicheng. She looked at his expression carefully. Why are you asking this? Wu Yangbeicheng's expression did not change. He did not even turn his eyes. I am curious. I'm curious why you do not like her. Jian Yun stroked her hair that fell beside her face and asked with a smile. I don't like her, but I don't like her. There's no reason. Wu Yangbeicheng stared at the TV and said coldly. Well, I will tell Yanran what you said and tell her to give up on you as soon as possible. Jian Yun deliberately sighed and curled her lips. Sigh. I really don't know why she likes an old man like you. Huo Liancheng seems to be 2 years younger than me. Wu Yangbeicheng finally looked at Jian Yun. Yes, he is also an old man. Jian Yun did not feel any pressure at all when she said that. More than a month ago, it was here. She had even said in front of Huo Liancheng that he was too old. Although at that time she thought that he was drunk and fell asleep, Huo Liancheng himself knew what she was thinking. What do you like about Huo Liancheng? Wu Yangbeicheng suddenly asked Jian Yun. Little uncle, don't change the topic. Jian Yun blushed, but she immediately glared at Wu Yangbeicheng and said seriously, I'm serious. Yanran is not bad. She looks good, has a high IQ, has a good job, and has a good family background. Most importantly, she likes you, so you can consider it. Wu Yangbeicheng was silent for a while. Jian Yun thought he was going to say he did not know Bai Yanran, but she did not expect him to say, Yunduo, since you asked today, I will tell you the truth. Bai Yanran is very good, but we are not suitable. Why not? Jian Yun's heart moved. From Wu Yangbeicheng's words, it should not be that she did not feel anything for Bai Yanran at all. To me, she is young. I treat her just like you. I only treat her like my niece. I do not have any other thoughts. Wu Yangbeicheng narrowed his eyes and continued. Also, I am not at home all year round. Marrying someone like me will be very hard. Jian Yun looked at Wu Yangbeicheng. Light flowed in her bright eyes. She said, Little uncle, you like Yanran too, right? Wu Yangbeicheng was taking the remote control to change the table when he heard Jian Yun's words. His long fingers suddenly trembled. Although his face did not show any expression, the subtle movements of his body had betrayed him. Little uncle, the things in this world are not clear to begin with. How can you say it is not appropriate if you do not try? Jian Yun's words seemed to touch a part of her heart. A look of confusion flashed across her eyes, but it soon disappeared. She paused and pursed her lips into a smile. She said that you have known each other for 5 or 6 years, and you have not changed your heart for so long. It seems that she really likes you. Since you also like her, why don't you give it a try? Isn't it the best thing to be in love with each other? Wu Yangbeicheng seemed to be moved by Jian Yun's words. His handsome face no longer had that cold and hard expression, but instead had a trace of gentleness. What about you? Are you and Huo Liancheng in love as well? After a while, Wu Yang Beicheng changed the topic to Jian Yun. Jian Yun was a little annoyed. Little uncle, we are talking about you. Why do you keep mentioning me? Wu Yang Beicheng looked deeply at Jian Yun, and the corner of his mouth suddenly curled up into a meaningful smile. Jian Yun felt guilty because he looked at her. She deliberately darkened her face and got up to leave. I will ignore you. I will call Yanran later and ask her to go on a blind date as soon as possible, and then find a young and strong young man. 3 days later, in Tangsen's Grade 1 district, when night fell, Jian Yun was doing yoga in her room. This was Huo Liancheng's house. Jian Yun came back yesterday afternoon to stay. She found that she had brought all her clothes here. She was not used to the original rented house, so she came back as soon as her grandparents left. Huo Liancheng had not come back yet, but he kept the frequency of phone calls every day. After a few days, Jian Yun felt that they were not as different as before. It was 8 o'clock. At this moment, Jian Yun's ears were stuffed with earphones. Her phone was tied to her arm. She stood at the end of the bed, with one leg up. At the same time, she lowered her waist and reached her hands behind her shoulders to hold the toes of her feet. This action was a little difficult, but to Jian Yun, it was very easy to do it. Her years of basic dancing skills were not for nothing. Jian Yun did a few stretching movements and was about to put down her legs to rest when out of the corner of her eye, she suddenly saw the bedroom door open at some unknown time. There was a person in front of the door leaning against the door frame with his arms crossed and looking at her with a smile. Chapter 167. The gentle great master, Huo Jianyun, did not react for a moment. She still kept her head back and stood on one foot with one hand on the tip of her toes. The figure of the person at the door was upside down in her eyes. Gradually, Jianyun's eyes focused and the person's face became clear. It was Huo Liancheng. At this moment, he was lazily leaning against the door with his lips curled up. He looked at her with a smile in his eyes. Jianyun did not expect Huo Liancheng to suddenly come back. She was shocked and lost her balance at this moment. Before she could put down her legs, she had already fallen diagonally and was about to fall heavily to the ground. Jianyun screamed and quickly closed her eyes. She was ready to fall down and lose face. Really, why is this person so annoying? He did not even knock on the door when he came in. However, the heavy fall that Jianyun expected did not come. The moment she closed her eyes, she saw Huo Liancheng in the corner of her eye and strode over and supported her. Jianyun was still in shock and only opened her eyes after a long time, but she immediately realized that something was not right. She blinked and immediately met Huo Liancheng's eyes. At this moment, he looked at her with a smile, but a teasing smile. When did you come back? Jianyun was embarrassed by him looking at her and could only find a way to say it. I came back for a while. Huo Liancheng was still smiling. His sword-like brows were relaxed and his eyes were gentle. He was usually so cold. When he smiled, it was as warm as the spring sun. Jianyun looked a little absent-minded. She could not help but curse in her heart. Did he know that he looked very good when he smiled? When he came back, he smiled at her. What was he trying to do? Huo Liancheng saw Jianyun staring at him in a daze, and the smile in his eyes became even more intense. It was like the blooming peach blossoms on the spring branches. They danced in the air and were extremely dazzling. Are you sure we want to talk like this? He raised his eyebrows. Ah? Jianyun's face was heated up by his gaze. She did not understand what he meant. If you like to talk like this, I will not mind. Huo Liancheng smiled and glanced at his left shoulder. Jianyun followed his line of sight and saw her feet. She was stunned at first and stared at the red shoes on her feet for a while. Suddenly, she felt very awkward. Oh my god. When did she put her legs on Huo Liancheng's shoulders? Woo, it must be when he caressed her just now. She did not have time to put her legs down, but her body was so close to him. This open posture was so embarrassing. It was over. It was over. This time she had lost a lot of face. Go, go, go. Jianyun used both her hands and feet to push Huo Liancheng away. She was embarrassed and did not have the face to face him again. She did not know what to say to him, so she turned her head and ran out. Huo Liancheng watched Jianyun slip away. His sword-like brows raised, and the haze in his heart disappeared without a trace. This little wild cat was really too cute when it was confused. He even regretted not teasing her for a while earlier. Jianyun rushed into the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was red like a spicy crayfish. She could not help but go crazy. Huo Liancheng had just returned, and she had already made such a big mistake. How were they going to get along with each other in the future? Also, would he misunderstand that she deliberately lured him in? Bewitching him? Jianyun felt that it was necessary to have a good talk with Huo Liancheng. She washed her face with cold water and made the temperature drop. She thought about what she would say later before she opened the door and walked out. Jianyun looked and saw that Huo Liancheng was not in the living room. The door of his bedroom was ajar, and there was a rustling sound inside, as if he was changing clothes. She hesitated for a moment but did not go over. Instead, she turned around and went into the kitchen. She planned to pour a cup of water first to calm her mind. The kitchen was very big and tidy. Although Huo Liancheng did not cook at home, the auntie cleaned every day. The hot water was ready. Jian Yun took a cup of water and took a sip. She heard Huo Liancheng say, "I want water too." Jian Yun was so scared that she almost choked. She was very nervous now. Whenever she thought that she would spend the night with Huo Liancheng in this room, she felt uncomfortable all over. So when she saw Huo Liancheng suddenly come behind her, it made Jian Yun feel even more suffocated. "Here." Jian Yun took the glass and took the water. She turned around and handed it to Huo Liancheng. However, Huo Liancheng did not take it. Jian Yun also noticed that he had a glass in his hand. There was half a glass of water in the glass. He raised his head and drank it all. "That is..." Jian Yun was speechless about my glass. The second half of her sentence left Jian Yun speechless. She did not need to say the second half of the sentence. This kind of thing, it wasn't President Huo's first time doing something like this. She should have gotten used to it a long time ago. Huo Liancheng drank the water and put the cup aside. He put his hand on the wall and locked Jian Yun in his arms. He looked down at her and asked, "Where is my gift?" "What gift?" Jian Yun felt that she did not have enough brains tonight. Why did she not understand what Huo Liancheng said? Huo Liancheng raised his eyebrows. "Didn't you say you wanted to thank me? Do you want to go back on your word?" "No." Jian Yun was relieved. It turned out that he remembered that incident, but she immediately frowned in distress. "I haven't thought of what to give you. Can you give me a hint? Do you have anything you want?" Huo Liancheng lowered his eyes and looked deeply at Jian Yun. Immediately, he was caught off guard and lightly kissed her lips. It was not as fierce as when he forcefully kissed her in the past. The kiss that was like a dragonfly brushing against the water separated at the slightest touch, but it left his aura at the corner of Jian Yun's mouth. "I want you kiss me." Huo Liancheng whispered in Jian Yun's ear. Jian Yun was stunned when she heard him. She did not dare to raise her head to look at him. However, her trembling long eyelashes revealed her current thoughts. Her mind was already in a daze. She could not understand what he meant when he heard his words. Huo Liancheng saw that Jian Yun did not speak, so he narrowed his eyes and tentatively kissed her. However, just as he was about to kiss her, Jian Yun suddenly came back to her senses. Her eyelashes lifted, and she suddenly saw Huo Liancheng's face so close to hers. She immediately became nervous. She subconsciously pushed him, but the difference in height and weight was too big. She could not push him. Seeing that he was about to kiss her, Jian Yun could not care less. She lowered her head and slipped out of Huo Liancheng's armpit. Huo Liancheng did not expect Jian Yun to do this. He turned his head and saw her rabbit-like figure running far away. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. Was he that scary? He scared her. Jian Yun rushed into her room and closed the door with a bang. Her heart was about to jump out of her throat. She could not understand why she was so nervous. It was not the first time she was kissed by him. Logically speaking, it should not be. It must be because Huo Liancheng was too gentle tonight. The unusual gentleness made her very uncomfortable. Yes, it must be like this. Jian Yun immediately pinched herself. That was enough. When he was rude, she hated him to death. Now that he was gentle, she was actually not used to it. Did she have the tendency to be abused? There was a knock on the door. Chapter 168, Bunny, what for? Jian Yun had a big reaction. "I brought you a present. Come out." Huo Liancheng's voice was low. "What present?" Jian Yun was not confident enough. "Won't you know when you come out and take a look?" Huo Liancheng's voice gradually faded away. Should he go out or not? Jian Yun suddenly felt conflicted. She was not greedy for gifts, but purely curious about what Huo Liancheng would bring back for her. Jian Yun pressed her ear against the door, wanting to hear if there was any sound outside, but the soundproofing of this house was too good. Other than hearing her own heartbeat, she could not hear anything else. At this time, Huo Liancheng was sitting on the sofa in the living room. He had changed into his clothes. He wore a casual sweater and gray pants. He looked casual and lazy. His hair was very short and usually combed back. He looked mature and cold. Today, there were a few strands of hair hanging on his forehead, making his face look a little gentler. When Jian Yun walked over, she saw Huo Liancheng playing with a box in his hand. The box was not big and had a certain height. The velvet face did not look like a jewelry box, but it was very high-end. What could it be? Huo Liancheng saw Jian Yun, but he did not give the box to her. Instead, he put it back into his pants pocket. Jian Yun curled her lips. She knew that Huo Liancheng was teasing her. What kind of expression is that? Huo Liancheng looked at Jian Yun and smiled. "Didn't you say you would give me a present?" Jian Yun reached out her hand without any hesitation. "There." Huo Liancheng lifted his chin and signaled Jian Yun to look behind him. Jian Yun turned her head and saw an exquisite box on the coffee table in front of the sofa. She raised her eyebrows. There was really a gift. "Aren't you going to open it and take a look?" Huo Liancheng leaned forward and crossed his arms. He looked at Jian Yun. He narrowed his eyes and a dark light flashed in his eyes that no one could see through. Jian Yun reached out and tore off the wrapping paper outside the box, revealing the box inside. She opened the box again, and her eyes lit up. So cute. Jian Yun did not expect Huo Liancheng to give her a pink, lop-eared rabbit doll. It was also a doll that could emit fragrance. "How do you know I like pink and rabbits?" Jianyun hugged the rabbit that was about 2 feet tall. She could not help but love it. Every girl had a princess dream. She was no exception. She had been living a good life since she was young. She liked pink the most. When she was young, all the decorations in her room were pink. If the clothes were not pink, she would not wear them. This kind of situation was only improved after she went to high school. Do you like it? Huo Liancheng saw Jianyun so happy with the doll, and his handsome face also had a smile. Yes, I like it. Jianyun had seen online that there were people selling these lop-eared rabbits, but most of them were imitation. They were not comparable to the one in front of her. Furthermore, this rabbit had a fragrance that was not strong. It was like the delicate fragrance of orchids and smelled very comfortable. Then how are you going to thank me? Huo Liancheng said with a smile that was not a smile. Jianyun turned to look at him and saw that his eyes were burning. There seemed to be a flame dancing in his eyes. There was a smile at the corner of his mouth. Her heart began to beat faster. You. Jianyun did not know what to say. Huo Liancheng had already come over and sat beside Jianyun. He tilted his head and pointed at his own face. Kiss me. Jianyun pursed her lips and subconsciously wanted to stay away from him. But damn it, this guy's face was perfect. That angular curve, and his tall nose bridge and heaven-defying long eyelashes. Even his skin was so attractive that it could be called killing his face. Forget it. Just a kiss, and satisfy his requirements. Otherwise, he wouldn't give up. Thinking like this, Jianyun did not hesitate any longer. She moved closer to Huo Liancheng's face and closed her eyes. Her pink lips gently landed on Huo Liancheng's face like feathers. His face was clean and refreshing. There was a unique smell that was very nice to smell. This thought lingered in Jianyun's mind for a moment. She realized that she had stayed on his face for a long time and immediately wanted to retreat. But at this moment, Huo Liancheng suddenly turned his head and his face turned. Jianyun did not have time to withdraw and just kissed his mouth. Jianyun's mind buzzed and her face began to steam. She wanted to dodge, but found that the back of her head was held by him. She wanted him to let go of her, but the moment she opened her mouth, the foreign object wanted to come in. Jianyun quickly clenched her teeth. She opened her eyes wide and looked at Huo Liancheng's face, which was right in front of her. He was also looking at her, but his eyes were gentle, like 2 pools of spring water. Ripples spread out and seemed to be able to seduce her heart. These days he kept looking at her like this, making Jianyun unable to hate him. There was a word called serving a beauty to commit murder. Jianyun felt that Huo Liancheng was currently serving a commander to commit murder. This fellow definitely knew that once he became gentle, there would not be many women who could reject his face. However, unlike the previous few times when he was rude, this time Huo Liancheng was very gentle and patient. He no longer raged like a storm, but instead kissed her like feathers brushing past. He was luring her step by step, luring her. Jianyun originally wanted to resist, but in the face of Huo Liancheng, who treated her so gently, she suddenly could not say any words of rejection. This was because Jianyun realized that regardless of whether she resisted or refused, the result did not seem to be any different. Furthermore, she was now living under someone else's roof and had accidentally boarded a pirate ship. If she blindly went against him, it would not be beneficial to her. Therefore, as long as she kept her final bottom line, this degree of contact would be up to him. She thought it through. At one point, Jianyun gave up on resisting. Under Huo Liancheng's eyes that were as thick as ink and as deep as the sea, she slowly lowered her long eyelashes and loosened her tightly clenched teeth. Huo Liancheng realized that Jianyun did not dodge and was even cooperating with him. His eyes seemed to light up, and in an instant, they were as bright as the morning sun. Although Jianyun had not kissed for the first time, she had not been in love for too long, so her actions were inevitably a little rusty. She closed her eyes tightly. Due to her nervousness, her eyelashes trembled slightly, and her breathing became disorderly. Her mind was currently in a daze, and she almost did not know what she was doing. She only knew that her heart was beating so fast that it was about to jump out of her throat. Time slowly passed. Jianyun did not know how long they had kissed for. She was a little dizzy from the kiss, and did not have any strength left on her body. Her hands had unknowingly clung onto Huo Liancheng's shoulders. Huo Liancheng's kisses became deeper and deeper. He was not satisfied with just this kind of contact. His hands started to move around Jianyun's body irregularly. Jianyun's head was dizzy, and she did not react for a moment. When she noticed that something was wrong, her little rabbit had been caught. Whoa! Jianyun seemed to have been electrocuted and her entire body suddenly trembled. She forcefully pushed Huo Liancheng. Huo Liancheng did not expect Jianyun to have such a big reaction. He did not use too much strength, so he was pushed away by her all of a sudden. You are a hooligan! Jianyun was embarrassed and angry. Without thinking, she slapped Huo Liancheng's face. She turned around and ran back to her bedroom. She closed the door with a bang. Chapter 169, I thought you were willing. Even though Huo Liancheng was experienced and knowledgeable, he was not shocked by Jianyun's slap. At this moment, he frowned. It was not painful. Jianyun's strength was no different from tickling him. It was because he was in high spirits. Her sudden slap almost made him wither. How many years had it been since he had touched a woman? Ever since that incident, he had completely sealed himself up and no longer had any relationship with the outside world. However, all of this had changed completely after meeting her. It had been 6 years, and he had thought of her every single moment. He wanted to find her, and he wanted to obtain her even more. Huo Liancheng looked at Jian Yun's back and was in a daze. Then, he smiled bitterly. Since he wanted to obtain her heart, he could not be too hasty. He had waited for so long and was not in a hurry. No matter what, tonight's welcome had already made him very happy. Jian Yun was so embarrassed that she was almost ashamed. She leaned against the door and covered her face with her hands. Her lips were swollen and painful. But it was not as uncomfortable as the feeling of being electrocuted coming from her body. She was really crazy. How could she think of cooperating with him? Now she was fine. She had been taken advantage of. That kind of secret place had been touched. How embarrassing. When she was in love with Shu Haiyang, he had never touched her. Huo Liancheng actually. Oh, Jian Yun was too embarrassed to think about it anymore. Furthermore, he thought that her relationship between men and women was very messy. With her reaction, he would definitely think that she was pretending on purpose. If he went out later, he would probably look at her with disdain again. He might even scold her for pretending to be innocent. Oh my God, she did not want to stay here any longer. She should not believe his nonsense. Wu Wenjing had said that men were lower body thinking animals. As long as the other party was female, they could do it. How could she be stupid enough to believe Huo Liancheng's words that said he was not interested in her? Thinking about this, Jian Yun felt that she could not wait any longer. She hurriedly ran to the cabinet and took out a box. She stuffed all her clothes into the box. Just as she was halfway through, the bedroom door opened. Huo Liancheng walked in. Seeing Jian Yun packing the box, Huo Liancheng frowned slightly. He went over to take the clothes in Jian Yun's hands and said unhappily, "What are you doing?" "I want to go back and stay." Jian Yun did not look at him. She snatched her clothes from his hands and wanted to stuff them into the box again. "Why?" Huo Liancheng asked. Jian Yun pursed her lips and suddenly became angry. She said angrily, "You don't keep your word. You said you wouldn't touch me." Huo Liancheng raised his eyebrows and looked at Jian Yun's face that was dyed red due to embarrassment and anger. A strange feeling suddenly flashed in his heart, but this emotion flashed too quickly. It was so fast that he did not have time to catch it, and had already disappeared without a trace. "I thought." Huo Liancheng narrowed his eyes and looked at Jian Yun. His beautiful lips opened slightly and he teased her. "You are willing." The moment he said that, Jian Yun felt a surge of blood rush to her head. She stared at Huo Liancheng and wanted to say something, but she opened her mouth but did not say anything. Her bright eyes were covered with a thick haze. "You go out." Jian Yun glared at Huo Liancheng. Her chest rose and fell violently. She pointed in the direction of the door and her voice was very cold. "You know I mean no harm." Huo Liancheng frowned even more. He also realized that there was something wrong with his expression and hurriedly wanted to explain. "Get out." But Jian Yun was furious. She did not want to pay attention to him for a moment. She just stubbornly pointed at the door. Seeing that Huo Liancheng did not move, she turned around to take the box. "If you don't leave, I'll leave." Huo Liancheng reached out to stop Jian Yun. He looked down at her. Her lips were tender and tender like cherry blossoms, but her eyes were as cold as ice. Her small face was full of stubbornness and pride that could not be offended. "Okay, I'll go out," Huo Liancheng said. After he finished speaking, he gave Jian Yun a deep look before turning around and walking out. The moment Huo Liancheng left, Jian Yun could no longer hold back her tears. She did not know why she was crying. Perhaps it was because of his words that he said that he thought she was willing. This made her feel ashamed. That's right. Originally, he had sworn that he did not like her. Previously, when he forcefully kissed her, she did not show the slightest bit of reluctance. However, in a short period of time, he actually welcomed her. How could this not cause him to misunderstand? It also made her feel terrible. Jian Yun looked at the time. It was almost 9 o'clock now. Even if she wanted to leave, she would not be able to find a car to return. She definitely would not want Huo Liancheng to parkour. Why not just take his car keys and let her drive away? This thought went through Jian Yun's mind for a moment, but was immediately rejected by her. This way, she felt like she was a thief and decided to let it go. But at this moment, Jian Yun calmed down. She also felt that she was too sensitive. It was just a sentence. Her reaction seemed to be excessive. Jian Yun could not help but sit by the bed in a daze. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that she seemed to be a little pretentious. She had heard all the unpleasant words in the past, but she had never seen her so angry. Why did she feel that her pride was offended just because of Huo Liancheng's joke? Could it be that she already had a different feeling about Huo Liancheng in her heart? It was because she cared about him that she felt embarrassed? Thinking of this, Jian Yun suddenly shivered. No, it was impossible. How could she like Huo Liancheng? If it was a feeling, it was just that she did not hate it. It could not be any other kind of emotion. Jian Yun thought it through and stopped struggling. At this time, her phone rang. It was Wu Wenjing. "Hello?" Jian Yun had just picked up the phone when she heard Wu Wenjing start shooting at her. "Jian Yun, I'm sorry." I've been too busy recently. I probably don't have time to go to the hospital to accompany Auntie these 2 days. It's okay, you do what you need to do. Jianyun immediately felt that something was wrong, so she asked again, right, what are you busy with? Is the company so busy? Xia Bingbing is still torturing you guys? It's not about the company. I have resigned today. Wu Wenjing suddenly heard that Jianyun's voice was not right and hurriedly asked, what's wrong with you? Are you crying? No, I have a cold. Jianyun did not tell anyone that she had moved into Huo Lianqing's house. She did not want to mention this, so she made up a random reason and continued to ask Wu Wenjing, didn't you say you were going to finish this month? Why did you suddenly think of quitting? Damn it, I'm really too tired. Xia Bingbing, that crazy woman, is a lunatic. Recently, she has been looking for trouble to deduct my salary. I was late this month a few times and my bonus was deducted. I don't have much money left. I might as well quit. Furthermore, I have other things to do now. I'm doing micro. Wu Wenjing excitedly announced this big matter. Micro-commerce? What are you selling? Jianyun was curious. Ever since her mother was hospitalized, she had never scrolled through WeChat moments, so she did not know anything about Wu Wenjing. Membrane, skincare products, underwear, and recently contacting fruits. Are you interested? Do it with me. Wu Wenjing's voice sounded very excited. She was also trying her best to encourage Jianyun to do it with her. Chapter 170. Apologize to you. I'll just let it go. I don't like chatting with people. Jianyun quickly shook her head. It was not that she did not like Wei Shang, but she felt that she was not suitable. Firstly, she did not have time to spend every day on the internet. Secondly, she was not good at chatting with people. It would be awkward if she kept chatting, so WeChat marketing, which required high EQ and great enthusiasm, was not suitable for her. Well, you're right. You're too thin-skinned. If others buy it back, you'll definitely give them a full refund. Then you'll lose money in a few days. Wu Wenjing knew Jianyun quite well. She did not force Jianyun. She had another purpose for calling tonight. Oh right, Jianyun, take care of the business. I also bought skincare products on behalf of others. There are both Japanese and Han. Go to my WeChat moments and see what you like. Tell me. I will give it to you. Just treat it as a sales increase for me, okay? Okay, don't give it to me. I can still take out this bit of money. Jianyun could not help laughing. She did not want to dampen Wu Wenjing's enthusiasm. Hearing her say so, she immediately nodded and agreed. Okay, I will give you the lowest discount. Wu Wenjing giggled. Immediately she seemed to have thought of something and asked Jianyun, by the way, President Huo is back. Do you know? Jianyun did not react for a moment when she suddenly heard Wu Wenjing mention Huo Lianqing. I saw Xia Bingbing tickling before work in the afternoon. She put on makeup and dressed up. She even wore a long skirt that was very revealing. She stood at the entrance of the company and waited for 2 hours. Haha, today's wind was especially strong. Her clothes and skirt were all messed up by the wind. She was simply laughing to death. Then, President Huo came to the company after work, but did not even look at her. He directly took the elevator to the 28th floor. Xia Bingbing chased after him, but accidentally stepped on her skirt with her high heels and fell to the ground. At that time, many people saw it. Wu Wenjing laughed as she spoke. Jianyun could not help but shake her head and sigh. I really do not know what Xia Bingbing is thinking. I feel that her conditions are good. Young and beautiful, all men should like her. Typical princess sickness. Wu Wenjing sneered and said in disdain, she is just an illegitimate daughter. She really thinks of herself as a princess. Illegal daughter? Jianyun was curious. Don't you know? Although she called the chairman grandpa, in reality, her mother was not the chairman's daughter. She was born by her father and her husband. She did not know why the chairman liked her. Oh, I won't tell you. A business has come to our door. Wu Wenjing suddenly called out in a hurry and then hung up the phone. Jianyun did not pay much attention to Xia Bingbing's matter. Wu Wenjing only mentioned it and she asked casually. She did not want to go back to the Mings to work. If she maintained this relationship with Huo Lianqing now, she would be discovered sooner or later if she went back to the Mings. She did not want to be the target of public criticism. After talking to Wu Wenjing on the phone, Jianyun's mood also calmed down. She remembered that she had just been angry with Huo Lianqing and could not help but feel embarrassed. Actually, what he said was right. It was indeed she who took the initiative to welcome him. Perhaps it was because of this that she gave him brafins. So, it was indeed. But Jianyun also would not apologize. Huo Lianqing had done so many bastards things to her, but she had not seen him apologize a few times. Jianyun put the clothes in the box back into the cabinet. After putting the box away, she opened WeChat. She was not interested in the information in the high school classmate group, and directly clicked on her WeChat moments. Jianyun took a look and found that her WeChat moments had been flooded by Wu Wenjing. This guy actually swiped it once every 10 minutes. All the products in front of her eyes were her products. Jianyun secretly shook her head. She wanted to find an opportunity to mention it to Wu Wenjing. If she continued to grind like this, sooner or later, she would be. Wu Wenjing's products were indeed rich in variety. There were all kinds of cosmetic products from the brand to famous skincare products in Japan and Korea, as well as the recently popular steel collar underwear. Jian Yun usually went to the special cabinet to buy skincare products. Her skin was very good and she did not dare to use ordinary products randomly. But Jian Yun could not endure Wu Wenjing's introduction and decided on a set of Shubi condom that she said was recently popular overseas. The original price was 1,200, and Wu Wenjing gave surrendered. She said that there was a supply there and gave the internal price to her. Now the hospital fees for her mother were all paid by Huo Liancheng, and Jian Yun no longer had any financial burden. She still had more than 80,000 yuan on her. So spending a few hundred yuan to take care of Wu Wenjing's business did not put any pressure on her at all. Jian Yun transferred the money to Wu Wenjing straightforwardly in exchange for Wu Wenjing's series of red lips flooding the screen. Wu Wenjing had business coming to her door again, so she went to greet others. Jian Yun had recently slept early and got up early. It was now past 9 o'clock and it was her sleeping time. She planned to leave her WeChat moments to brush her teeth. At this time, Huo Liancheng's WeChat dialogue suddenly popped up and he sent a message to Jian Yun. Jian Yun's eyelids jumped. She had not thought about whether she should see what he sent, but her hands were faster than her brain. When she reacted, Huo Liancheng's WeChat dialogue had already been opened. Still angry? Huo Liancheng asked. Jian Yun hesitated, not sure if she should reply. They were only a few meters away from each other, but they were talking in this way. It felt a little strange. No, Jian Yun only replied 2 words after a long time. Jian Yun had just sent out the message. In less than 3 seconds, someone knocked on the door of her room. Huo Liancheng's voice also sounded outside. Can you come in? Jian Yun suddenly became nervous again. She stared at the direction of the door and asked, What is it? Open the door first. Huo Liancheng was very patient. Jian Yun hesitated, but she also knew that even if she did not see him tonight, they would still meet tomorrow. So, no matter how reluctant she was, she still said, The door is not locked. Come in yourself. Huo Liancheng turned the lock and pushed the door open. He first looked at the bed. There were no boxes or clothes. He heaved a sigh of relief and there was an undetectable smile in his eyes. He saw Jian Yun standing at the window with her back facing him, so he walked over and held her shoulder. He looked down at her and softly said, I don't mean anything else. Yes. Jian Yun twisted her hand and tried to get away from Huo Liancheng's hand, but he held it very tightly and she could not get away. Are you not angry with me? She asked. Huo Liancheng reached out his fingers and pinched Jian Yun's chin, making her look up at him. The light in the bedroom was gentle. Huo Liancheng stood with his back lit up. His tall figure enveloped Jian Yun. He looked like a lofty mountain, giving her an inexplicable sense of peace. Are you apologizing? Jian Yun looked up and had to look at Huo Liancheng. She saw that his eyes were gentle, and his voice was extremely gentle. With such a handsome appearance without any friends, the anger in her heart had long disappeared. For a moment, Jian Yun could not help but think that she was not that she was too unprincipled. Recently she seemed to have been men. He had deceived her several times. Yes, I apologize to you, Huo Liancheng answered seriously.